This is the comparison that you have been asking for. Today, the Tesla Model Y faces its strongest challenge yet from the Zeekr 7X. And to keep it honest, we've thrown in a third competitor there as well in the Kia EV5.
That's right, Alex, and this is going to be a really interesting comparison, and we want to run you through everything that you need to know about these three electric SUVs. So, powertrain, technology, efficiency, driving range, the interior, and of course, we're going to see how these things drive on road.
Let's get started. All three cars on test are long-range dual-motor all-wheel drive editions, and they're all priced around $80,000 drive away. The Zeekr 7X starts from $72,900 before on-road costs, the Tesla Model Y long-range all-wheel drive from $68,900 before on-road costs, and the Kia EV5 GT line all-wheel drive from $71,770 before on-road costs. All three cars, as you see them here, are optioned with premium paint. $1,900 on the Tesla, $1,500 on the Zeekr, and $775 on the Kia. There are also 20-inch alloy wheels on the Tesla for $2,400, white interior for $1,500, and full self-driving supervisor. We'll get onto that a little bit later. That's $149 a month subscription on the Model Y. All up, you're looking at about $80,700 drive away for the Tesla, $81,400 for the Zeekr, and $78,700 for the Kia. On the outside of these cars, all three have LED headlights and alloy wheels, 20s on the Kia and Tesla, and 21s on the Zeekr. The Zeekr 7X rides on adaptive air suspension, the Tesla Model Y has frequency selective dampers, while the Kia is pretty simple in terms of its underpinnings. These three cars are all about the same price and a very similar size, but they take a different approach to styling. This EV5 is the most conventional SUV of the bunch. It's a very boxy look, akin to the Kia EV9, large electric SUV, with this new front fascia that we've seen on a lot of other models in the Kia range these days. Now, the Tesla Model Y is the car that most other electric SUVs in this category are modelled off. Relatively big footprint, sloping rear end, give it sort of a coupe-style aerodynamic look. This 2025 Model Y, or now into 26, has made a few changes. New light bar across the front, new split headlights as well, a bit of a Cybertruck inspired look. We have done a full video review just on this car. Click up there to watch that once you're done with this video. Meanwhile, we have the contender very much, or the challenger in this comparison today, is the Zeekr 7X. This, to be honest with you, is a really handsome SUV. Zeekr is owned by Geely, one of China's biggest car makers. They also own Volvo, and there is a bit of European design flair in this car for sure. You'll notice a big black strip across the front end. In China, this is actually a light bar that can show messages across the front of the car. That isn't offered on Aussie cars. We think because of ANCAP and Euro NCAP rules, that probably isn't going to be great if a pedestrian crashes into that. But overall, it is a really sleek design, and this one being the performance version, you get 21-inch wheels with orange brake calipers behind them.
Now, the reality of owning an electric car is the fact that you're probably going to be sitting waiting for it to charge at times, especially if you're on a road trip. The beauty of this EV5 is that you can do it with a bit of comfort, like you've got here in the driver's seat. So I've got the seat all the way back, the backrest is down, but as you can see, I've got this nice little ottoman here as well, which means my feet are off the ground. This is actually pretty comfortable. I could have a little nap while the car charges up. But when you're driving, let's talk about all the other normal stuff. So we do have position memory there and a whole bunch of other features here. Let me run you through them now.
In top spec GT line trim, this represents all you can eat for the Kia EV5. On the inside, you get synthetic leather seats with electric adjustment up front, as well as heating, ventilation, memory, and massaging. Rear outboard seats are heated, and you do have a sunroof here with a sun blind. The infotainment display is 12.3 inches in size, and it's got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both wired and wireless by the way, with digital radio and native navigation. There's a digital instrument cluster as well of 12.3 inches. There's an 8-speaker sound system here in the EV5, along with dual zone climate control, a head-up display, 360-degree camera system, reflector-style LED headlights, and an electric tailgate.
Okay, so it is well equipped, but you can say that about the other SUVs in this comparison as well. And the interior of this EV5, well, it's maybe feeling a little bit regular and a little bit underdone, I suppose, in terms of the presentation, in terms of the materials, and some of the practical touches. One thing I want to talk about is this interesting setup that we have here with this sort of center console area. So we've got an armrest which pops up. I mean, that almost looks like a seat, but at the same time, it's not really good for storage either. So you've got a little pocket here. That's probably going to get pretty gross if you keep putting stuff in there all the time. It's quite deep and not really that practical for me. So it doesn't really work that well from my point of view. If you're going to store stuff in here, it's just going to fall down behind the seats and that sort of thing. So you're using this open space here instead. I mean, that works okay, I suppose, but it's always going to be in sight. You've got a wireless charging pad there, a bit of space for other bits and bobs, 2 cup holders there as well. But beyond that, your storage is a little bit limited, to be honest with you. There's one hook there, there's a regular old glove box as well. But when you start feeling the materials in this EV5, it's just a little bit more regular. And I think the design isn't as striking on the inside of this car as it is compared to the others. But what we do have here, which works well, are physical controls and buttons for things like volume, climate and that sort of thing. And we've got twin 12.3 inch infotainment displays here. So one is for infotainment, one is for the driver's cluster. They both work well, nice and crisp. You've got good functionality and control and that sort of thing. And also in between those two displays, you've got a small 5-inch display, which does a lot of your climate controls. So you can see where the temperature is. You can do a bit of basic controls there as well without having to dig into another menu on the infotainment. So that is absolutely an advantage. And we've got a head-up display here, which is something that the Tesla doesn't have, for example. So that's all pretty good, but at the same time, I feel like this just doesn't have the same sort of wow factor on the inside as the other two have. Now, the second row of this Kia EV5 has a lot of cool tricks, and I'm going to run you through all of them. But firstly, let's talk about space and size. We've got good legroom on offer here. I would say it's probably not outright as good as the other two in this segment, but at the same time, it's probably plenty big enough for most usage. So we've got good legroom here, knee room is good, a nice flat floor for spaciousness, and a sunroof there as well. Headroom, well, you got plenty of that also. The seat is quite comfortable. We don't have any sliding ability here, but you can tilt the backrest if you want a little bit more of relaxation mode there. But let's talk about some of the tricks, because there are quite a few. Now you'll notice that I've got a USB-C point in front of me here, but it's actually on the side on this seat in front, because we've actually got, it's almost like you're on an aeroplane, a nice fold-out table there. That's only on the passenger side here, not the driver's side, but that will work for kids who want to get a little bit creative or driving around. Maybe it's going to sit the iPad on there, or they can do coloring in, something like that. Works quite well. And also we've got a little shelf down here, which is actually heated or cooled, depending on what you want to put in there. So really nice little feature that works well. And then a pop down armrest in the middle with some cup holders. Now these headrests actually also work as a hook, so that's pretty good. We've got heated seats in the back here as well, air vents in the pillars. So this is a well thought out and well featured second row that has some cool party tricks for family usage. Now here's the boot of the Kia EV5, and it's got a lot of party tricks in here, which kind of makes up for the fact that this isn't the biggest boot out of the three, but it's not too bad. But let's talk about some of these tricks. Firstly, we've got adjustable hooks on the side here. Pretty cool. You can move those around for different spots as you need them, but I would hazard a guess that you might be losing a few of those as time goes on. You've got a couple of little bins on the side here, up on the top as well. That's all really cool. But when you lift up the floor here to access some more room, actually becomes a really handy second shelf. That's really cool if you want to put maybe 2 sets of groceries, or you got some fruit and veg from the markets or something like that. You could put those there underneath. The stuff on top isn't going to crush it. A little bit of extra storage space in there as well. And then up the front here, that's where your charging cable and your tyre mobility kit is fitted. So yes, electric cars very rarely have a spare of any kind. You are stuck with a goo kit, unfortunately. Now we also have a power outlet here on the side there. That is a 240 volt power outlet, which does work well if you want to access this big battery for auxiliary power. But I will note that this car maybe has had somewhat of a hard life. We've got a bit of peeling on the materials here and a couple of scratches around the place. So if you're going to really use and abuse the boot of your EV5, you might see a few marks around the place, but it will work well, I think, for families. Now you can't avoid the white seats in this Model Y long range that we have here at the moment. But aside from that, let's talk about some of the standard kit that you get in this top spec Model Y.
The interior of the Tesla Model Y long range is pared back in looks, but it does carry a lot of equipment. Fake leather seats have heating, ventilation and electric adjustment with memory, while you have heated rear outboard seats with electric tilt adjustment. The 15.4-inch infotainment display here is backed up by an 8-inch display in the second row, but you don't have any Apple CarPlay or Android Auto here, nor do you have a digital cluster in front of the driver. There's dual zone climate control, a 360-degree camera system, 16-speaker sound system, electric tailgate and matrix LED headlights here. The Tesla also has a fixed glass sunroof which has a UV coating to keep the sun's heat out a little bit, but it doesn't have a blind.
Now, aside from that, of course, the design, it's unmistakable. I don't really need to tell you that I'm in a Tesla at the moment. It's plainly obvious, and it's a big part of the appeal, I think, of this car, but also a bit of annoyance as well in terms of everything running through the infotainment display here and having that ultra minimalized design. But in terms of practicality, things are actually pretty good. Big center console here. There's your single USB power outlet there. That's USB-C. Really easy to miss as well, by the way. And then you've got good storage in here. So 2 cup holders, and people who like to keep things neat, that's awesome because you can just close that right up and everything looks nice and neat and tidy here. Wireless charging up here, room for your phone. You keep your card there as well for starting the car. But otherwise, that is literally about it. Of course, other than this infotainment display. So you've got no Apple CarPlay, you've got no Android Auto, but at the same time, the car kind of gets away with it because this is a fairly intuitive operating system. You've got good navigation setup here. It's really nice and responsive. The menus make sense. You can find everything that you need relatively easily here. So it does work, and you can just actually search for something like it is on a computer or something like that. So it does work well from that point of view, but at the same time, a lot of users would prefer Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The other two SUVs in this comparison have it. This does not, nor does it have any kind of display in front of you. It doesn't have a head-up display either, so your speed comes up here, your range, all of that sort of stuff. Everything literally goes through this screen here. So some will love it, but some might not like it so much. Now these seats, aside from being ultra white, and as a parent these give me the absolute heebie-jeebies, they are comfortable. You've got good adjustment here, electric adjustment through the steering column, and the materials and the build quality, it's all really nice in this car. We have a lot of talk in the office around whether this is a luxury car, and well, what is luxury, right? It's a hard thing to define, but we've got good quality here. The design is really cool as well. Obviously the air vents are integrated into the dash, and just a bit of variety in terms of the materials and just the way it all comes together. This is a really nice interior to spend time in, I have to say. Can you imagine letting your kids run right in the back of this ultra white Tesla Model Y? I cannot, because these seats would get absolutely trashed, but you can get a more regular color here. They might not look as good, but black would be the choice for me. And the second row overall is a very spacious place, and you'll see this in a lot of medium SUVs actually that are electric. Because we do have an electric platform here, dedicated electric by the way, this has a lot of packaging advantages. So you've got good legroom on offer here and headroom as well. Now this seat in front does take up a little bit of space, I suppose, in terms of forward visibility. And you've got this glass roof here, which is pretty impressive, lets in a lot of light, gives a lot of airiness into the cabin, but still, I mean, even though it is better than the previous Tesla Model Y, we do get a fair amount of heat coming into the cabin here. So when this car is parked for a while, you'll notice it's fairly hot in here, and also the aircon can work overtime on those hot days to try and keep those cabin temperatures down. But otherwise, this interior is quite nice. The seats are comfortable. You've got a pop-down armrest with cup holders here, 2 USB-C power outlets there, but of course, the piece de resistance in the second row is this small display, which is effectively a small version of that screen up front. So this screen is really cool. You've got good controls here in terms of climate, some of the seat stuff as well, and of course audio things. And you've got some games in there as well, which is really cool. The kids will love it, but maybe they will love it a little bit too much if you prefer them to look out the window. But you've got games there for adults as well if you need to burn some time in the back here. So it's a really cool feature to have, and it's something that the other two SUVs cannot match. Now the boot of this Model Y, it is the biggest on paper, but I think besides those facts and figures, this is the best because you've got really good functionality here. And once again, it's all about that electric car packaging, because open that up there, you've got a massive storage bin. That would be perfect for things like groceries. You don't want them sliding around in the back. There's also storage bins on each side of this floor as well. It's pretty good in terms of size and length and width and that sort of thing. And you've got buttons here to pop down that second row if you need more space there. So it works, and it works really well from a family point of view. This is the best boot out of the three. Now you could argue that the Zeekr 7X has potentially the most traditional interior layout of these three medium SUVs, but what you cannot argue with, I think, is the amount of standard equipment that you get, because there is a lot.
The Zeekr 7X is the most comprehensively equipped vehicle out of these three, which helps to justify its highest price point. It has the biggest screen with a 16-inch infotainment display, which has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, along with native navigation. The digital instrument cluster is 13 inches inside, and the driver has a head-up display as well. Seats are wrapped in Napa leather. They've got heating, ventilation, electric adjustment up front, along with memory and massaging as well. The second row has power recline along with heated outboard seats. But wait, there is more. You've got powered rear sunshades here and a 3-zone climate control system. There's also a 21-speaker sound system, a 360-degree camera, and a sunroof with an electric blind, and of course an electric tailgate.
Now, in terms of the overall design, I do like this 7X. In terms of the materials, the design, the way it looks and feels, I thought that this might have been a glove box or something like that at some stage, but it's actually the air vent, because similar to the Tesla, you can't control the air vents mechanically. It's actually done through the infotainment display. There is a glove box, however, and it's controlled by a button. I don't know why they couldn't have just put a regular old latch or lever there, but hey, there is a glove box there. And in terms of storage, general storage for everyday usage, this car does work well. So twin wireless charging pads, you're seeing that a lot more often these days up the top here. And then there's a big storage bin underneath, which would work well, I think, for things like purses, handbags, and whatnot. Slide this forward, you've got 2 cup holders in there, plus room for a little bit of extra stuff. That does work well. And then this center console bin here, so that opens both ways, similar to a 300 series Land Cruiser, for example, and that is a big space in there. There's a spot for your key, that's where we've put ours there at the moment. But in terms of practicality, this all looks and feels quite bulky, but there's a lot of room built into it, which I think does work well. Now, what is dominant, however, in the inside of this Zeekr is the infotainment display, because obviously it's massive and there's a lot of stuff going on here. So we do have a physical volume control, which is nice. A couple of basic controls here, something for the boot, driving modes, but most of your controls are in through this infotainment. And it's pretty good, actually. It's one of these cars where you really need to sit down and learn and figure out where everything is. And by the time you spend a little bit of time with it, I think it's going to be okay, because there is a lot going on in here. If you're just driving it for a couple of days, it might be a bit bewildering, but spend some time with it, get to know it, and you'll start to figure out where everything is, where you need it. Now, we've got climate controls through here. We've got all sorts of cameras. We've got all sorts of different modes. There's, like I said, a whole lot happening. But you've also got in this car a regular digital cluster in front of you. That's quite a neat little design here, good clarity there, and you've got a head-up display. So no shortage of information for the driver to take in. But in terms of regular stuff, in terms of seat comfort, these are really nice, actually, these seats. You've got a lot of features, of course, but in terms of the materials, the seating position, they're nice and soft and cushy, I think. They're not trying to be too sporty. They're not too flat at the same time. The material feels nice. I think this does work really well overall. In terms of value for money, fit and finish, the amount of equipment you get, but just the overall execution, this 7X is mighty impressive. Here's the second row of the Zeekr 7X, and first things first, let's talk about space, because this is actually quite stunning, the amount of leg room I have in the second row. That's my driving position up front there, and I have double checked this actually, because I thought, oh, maybe the steering wheel had moved forward and the seat had moved forward as well, but no, that's my driving position, and I've got huge amounts of leg room here. It's not a fully flat floor, but it's pretty much almost flat. I've got a heap of headroom as well, and these seats are, like up front, quite soft and cushy. The materials feel nice. I've got pretty good visibility. I mean, this feels certainly very spacious, comfortable and luxurious in the back. And you do have a lot of cool features going on here as well. So we've got electric adjustment for the backrest here. The seats don't slide forward and back, but you can actually use some buttons here on the door on the passenger side to move this seat forward and back. We haven't figured out how to turn that off. So have fun telling your kids to stop doing it on that long road trip. What I do love are these shelves underneath the seat here. So that is really handy storage space. Fairly spacious, actually. I'm thinking nappies, wipes, snacks for road trips, that sort of thing. Really cool to have that built in on this car. If you want power outlets though, you have to pull this armrest down here in the middle. There's 2 cup holders there. Open that up. You've got a USB A and C in there. A little bit of flocking as well, which is nice. Good attention to detail around the inside of this Zeekr. But that's not all. You've also got a camera here on the B pillar which feeds into the screen in front, so you can keep an eye on what the kids are up to without actually turning your neck around to look. That's a little bit more safe, I suppose. But you've also got sunshades in the back here, and they're electric. This is something that you would normally see in something like a very expensive big limousine, a big Audi or Mercedes or something like that. Really cool feature for a car at this price point. Pretty amazing, and obviously for kids in the back, really, really handy to have. Now, there's one trick in this Zeekr that I wanted to show you on camera because it's pretty cool. Because we have air suspension in this car, you can actually use these buttons to lower the back down and raise it up again to help you load heavy stuff into the back. But there's a problem because right now, well, it's just not working. We've tried to figure it out in terms of turning the car on, off, locking it, unlocking it, doing all those things to see if it would work, but unfortunately it doesn't. But aside from that, we do have a boot that will probably sit in between the Tesla and the Kia in terms of space and practicality. We do have some cool tricks here. You can open this back up here. You do have a bit of a bin there, not as big as the Tesla, but still it's there, and it would work well for things like groceries and that sort of thing. There is almost a divider here, but it's a little bit flimsy, I suppose. But there is extra space as well when you pull this false floor up a little bit further forward. So that drops the floor down a little bit more. You could put some stuff in there to stop it from sliding around as well, or fit some things that are taller in the back. You get a sense here that this car has some nice materials in terms of the finish. We've got some tie down points, we've got hooks, and we've also got a 12-volt power outlet there. So this all does work pretty well overall. Well, we've spoken about the business end of these cars with the boot, but let's talk about the storage party at the front, because all of these electric SUVs have frunks. Yes, that kind of strange word we've invented in recent years. This is the Zeekr 7X. This has the smallest frunk here, but it is still useful, I think. There's a bit of usable space there, plus a little bit of a shelf at the back. And if you're wondering, that's where the windscreen washer fluid is on all three of these cars. Now, the Tesla, this is the best of the three in terms of space overall. Really quite big, actually. You can put a lot of groceries in here, even a small suitcase, I think, a lot of bags, and you do have a drain bung in there as well. So if you're going to the beach, it gets all sandy, you could hose it out. That's a really cool thing. But the Kia EV5, it's not too shabby either. So there we go. That's quite a usable space as well. Not as deep as the Tesla, as you can see. A nice rubber floor though, so things won't slide around as much in here. Really usable, and it's got a bit of a weather strip as well.
Powering the Model Y long-range all-wheel drive are 2 electric motors and an 82 kilowatt-hour usable battery pack. Tesla doesn't quote an exact power output for the car, but Chinese owner's manual suggests about 330 kilowatts combined. What you do need to know is it claims 0 to 100 kilometers an hour acceleration in 4.8 seconds, as well as a 600 kilometer claimed driving range in European WLTP testing. DC fast charging is rated at up to 250 kilowatts for a 10 to 80% time of about 35 minutes. There's also AC charging at up to 11 kilowatts, but no vehicle-to-load support in the Model Y. Powering the Zeekr are 2 electric motors, 310 kilowatt rear and 165 kilowatt front, for a combined output of 475 kilowatts and 710 newton meters of torque. Zeekr claims 0 to 100 kilometer an hour acceleration of 3.8 seconds, while its nickel manganese cobalt battery pack is good for a claimed range of 543 kilometers. The star of the show though is DC fast charging, rated up to 420 kilowatts. That's more than the fastest chargers in Australia can support, for a claimed 10 to 80% time of 16 minutes. There's also 22 kilowatt AC charging, the fastest of the bunch, as well as vehicle-to-load support at up to 3.3 kilowatts for powering external electrical devices. The EV5 GT line uses a 160 kilowatt front electric motor and a 70 kilowatt rear electric motor for 230 kilowatts combined and 480 newton meters of torque. The result is a claimed 0 to 100 time of 6.3 seconds, while its 88.1 kilowatt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery is good for 470 kilometers of claimed driving range in European WLTP testing. DC fast charging is the slowest of the bunch, limited to 140 kilowatts for a 10 to 80% claimed time of 38 minutes. AC charging is rated up to 11 kilowatts, while there's also vehicle-to-load technology on offer. One of the key features in this top-of-the-range 7X are these doors. They are power-operated front and rear doors. You open them here with this button on the outside. There's also a close button on the inside of the door there to control when you're inside the car. Now, you're probably wondering, how safe are they? Will they detect a human in the way? Well, if I stand here in front of the door, they'll open a bit and then stop. They do have motion sensors on them to prevent them opening into me. But you're probably thinking, if you, say, left something in the car, you've closed the doors, you've walked away and walked back, and then you want to put your hand there to stop the door from closing. Will it detect it, or will it crush your fingers? Well, I don't feel like finding out with my fingers, so I've brought a handy cucumber, and we're going to find out. Pull that there. You can see this is sort of where the sharp angle of the door is, where you're most likely to sort of stick your fingers in. Let's see what happens. Okay, you can see that just bounced off the sill, and that cucumber is perfectly fine. But what about if I get it on the sharp bit? Now this is sort of, if you don't get your hands that far in, will the car actually detect that and stop the door? Let's find out. Let's see what that does. Now, if that was my finger, that probably wouldn't look good. Now, obviously this is an extreme test, right? We're putting it in the spot that it's most likely to crack, but yeah, that's not a great look. So be careful with these doors. If you're closing them in a hurry, don't put your finger in, just let it close and open it again. We've already talked about claimed driving ranges, but here are how these cars did in the real world on the same test loop in inner Sydney. The Tesla is a clear leader on energy use, so interestingly, the Zeekr and the Kia both beat their claim figures. Still, that gives the Tesla the longest real-world driving range of the bunch, though it's worth noting it has a nickel manganese cobalt battery, which means it's best to keep it between 20 and 80% charged on a regular basis, so not to accelerate the wear of the battery cells, only charging to 100% on longer trips. That's not something you have to worry about with the EV5's lithium iron phosphate battery. The Zeekr's bigger battery means it actually has a very similar real-world driving range to the Model Y. Of course, in the petrol car world, that's like fitting a bigger petrol tank rather than making your car more fuel efficient. This Tesla Model Y is probably the weirdest car to drive, so to speak, and the one that requires the most learning and the most retraining of your brain to figure out how to drive. But once you do, it is actually probably the most rewarding here of the bunch. This one being the long-range version, you get dual motor all-wheel drive, as with all the cars here, and it is a pretty quick car for what it is. 0 to 100 in less than 5 seconds. That's the kind of performance you got from a V8 Commodore or Falcon about 5 years ago or so. When you put your foot down, there is instant response as you'd expect of an electric car, and it really pushes you into the back of the seat. And it's got a really nice and responsive accelerator pedal, which is good for both city driving as well as on a country road. Now, as for that retraining of the brain that I mentioned before, the biggest thing you'll notice is the steering in this car is super quick and super sharp. You get used to it over time. Suppose you get used to everything in every car that you drive, the longer that you own it for. But it does require a little bit of getting used to. It's not quite as frenetic as the old Model Y used to be, the pre-facelift model, but also that is a good thing. It gives it a very sort of athletic feel. It makes the car feel smaller and lighter than it is. There's a fair bit of weight behind the steering, and you can control it through the screen if you like. But yeah, something that is worth getting used to in this car. The other thing you've got to get used to is the way the instrumentation works in this car. My speed is on the center display in the middle here, so I do have to take my eyes off the road at times, but it is something you get used to the more you drive this vehicle. Also on that screen is your gear shifter, which you'll notice doing a 3-point turn can be a little bit awkward at times. There is an auto shift out of park feature that's in this car. Basically means the car will anticipate your moves in a 3-point turn. It's not perfect, but it does help to alleviate some of the pain of not having a normal gear shifter on a stalk or on the center console. One of the areas where this newer Model Y improved over the previous model is in the ride quality. Now, the suspension in the old Model Y was pretty stiff and pretty firm at times, I have to say. This car still has a very sporty edge to it, a bit of a taut feel over bumps, but it is still pretty comfortable and pretty compliant. It does have the firmest ride of the three. You certainly feel bumps more than in the other cars here. But as far as a balance of comfort and control goes, it is still very good. You can feel the road below you, but it's not uncomfortable, which is a good thing. As with all Teslas, there isn't a whole lot of control of the regenerative braking system. You do get a choice between standard and reduced modes, but regardless, when you lift off the accelerator pedal, it will bring the car eventually to a full stop. It is very smooth in the way it does that. But yeah, this is something you also got to get used to in this vehicle. In terms of other practicalities, the vision out of this car is really good. The bonnet drops away from you. You feel like you're sort of sitting at the front of the car rather than behind a very long bonnet. Visibility is pretty good, both out the side mirrors as well as sort of over my shoulder there. Road noise and wind noise are pretty well isolated as well. You do get some tyre rumble still, but it is a lot better than the previous iteration of the Model Y. Tesla's big USP these days in its cars is full self-driving supervised. It's effectively a autonomous driving system with human supervision. You've got to pay attention to the road, and if I say pick up my phone or look away from the road for too long, it will cancel the system and stop me from using it. But effectively, I can drive here with my hands largely off the wheel. I'm sort of just lightly brushing it just for safety's sake here, and the car will do everything: turning, braking, steering, reacting to cars, reacting to pedestrians and traffic, stop signs, everything on the road, you name it. It's a really capable tech and really cool feature as well. It does come at a cost though, $10,000 if you pay for it outright, or $149 a month on a subscription. And you can also cancel it obviously just by tapping the brake or by applying a bit of steering there on the wheel. This Model Y is also the most efficient car on test. We saw about 16.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on our test loop with these cars, compared to just over 19 with the Zeekr and just under 21 with that Kia. Overall, this Model Y is the car you've got to put the most effort into getting used to and sort of learning how to drive around some of its quirks, perhaps. But once you do it, I think it is a really rewarding car to drive. Now, it would be fair to say this EV5 is the least resolved of these three cars to drive, which is a surprise, given this is a legacy brand, perhaps a brand that's the most well known in Australia, I'd say. And yeah, there's some areas where this EV5 isn't quite up to the same level as the Tesla or the Zeekr. In terms of performance, it's also the slowest car of the bunch here. It's not slow, mind you, 0 to 100 in about 6 seconds or so, 230 kilowatts or thereabouts. This is still a pretty brisk car by family SUV standards, and it certainly doesn't feel underpowered or ever like it's really running out of legs, particularly on a country road. But even though it's the slowest car here, it doesn't feel like it managed the power anywhere near as well as the other cars. Part of that is down to the way the power is delivered as well as the tyres. Most of that power is actually going to the front wheels, similar to a petrol-powered family SUV. And these tyres, they're Kumo Solus tyres, are, to be honest, not very good. In the dry, the grip is okay, but not fantastic. You notice that perhaps when you're sort of accelerating onto a freeway junction or out of a roundabout perhaps, and you need to give it a bit of grunt to sort of get out and into a gap, for example. It can sort of torque steer, which is a sensation you feel when the steering wheel tugs away in your hands, as well as some wheel spin at times. The traction control then has to kick in and try and stop. It's just not quite as resolved in putting down its power as the other cars here. In terms of the suspension, it's the most conventional of the bunch here. There's no frequency selective dampers like you get in the Tesla or adaptive air suspension like you get in that Zeekr. And that means that while suspension is quite soft over speed bumps perhaps, it can feel a little bit clumsy over particularly bigger bumps in the road. And it's sort of, you can see it there, really jostles you around at times. And it's just not as comfortable of an experience as it really should be for a car that at higher speeds on a country road is quite soft in the way the body sort of deals with undulations. It kind of feels like sort of a little bit floaty at times. You're kind of not getting air, but it kind of feels like turbulence in a plane, for example. And yeah, it's just not quite as resolved as the other cars here. But it isn't all bad. There are some things we do like about the way this car drives. For one, there's a lot of control of the regen braking in this car. You can control the regen in the other two, but this one has more in terms of the way of the settings you have to play with. I've got paddles here behind the steering wheel. I can switch between level 1, 2, 3, as well as a full one pedal mode that will bring me to a full stop if I like. Or I can hold down the right hand pedal and I go into auto mode, which is effectively like reverse cruise control in a way. You can control how much of a base setting you want in that auto regen, for example. Loads of customization, which is great. And yeah, good to see there is a lot of options you can play with here as a driver. The brake pedal itself is also quite natural in the way it feels, much softer than that Tesla as an example. The steering is also a bit easier to get along with. It's not the most precise, the most direct, for example, but it is pretty intuitive in its weighting. It doesn't really get in your way too much around town. There's some nice heft to it, but also it's not too cumbersome or too heavy to deal with in city driving. Visibility in this car is also a highlight. You've got massive windows all around. It does feel like a box on wheels, which is a good thing in terms of giving you good vision out of the car. But also it does feel bigger than it is on a country road. When you're sort of sliding it through some corners, for example, it does feel like the car is more cumbersome than it actually is in terms of its footprint. And that's the reverse of the EV9, the bigger SUV in Kia's electric range, which actually feels smaller than it really is to drive. Also worth calling out the safety aids in this car. As with all three here, you've got a full suite of driver assists, from adaptive cruise to lane centering to lane keep assist and so forth. But there are two that in particular do get on our nerves. Number one is the speed sign recognition system. Now, overspeed warnings that sound when the car exceeds the speed limit it's detected are nothing new in modern cars these days. But this one in the EV5 is particularly annoying because you can't silence it with the same shortcut as other Kia and Hyundai models. In those cars, say an EV9 or a Hyundai Ioniq 5 for example, you can just hold down the button on the right side of the steering wheel, the mute button I should say, and the audio alert will silence, but it'll still keep the speed limit visual sign here on the dash. This EV5 is different. At least this test car doesn't seem to do that. You can hold down for the mute button for as long as you like and it will never silence, which is a little bit annoying. Also worth calling out, the driver attention monitor as well is a little bit too overzealous for our liking. There is still some room for improvement in that respect, and the other two cars here are better calibrated with that technology. And look, on the whole, this EV5 is just not quite as refined to drive as the other cars here. Not as quick, not as comfortable, not as efficient especially, and not as easy to drive perhaps as the other two. And look, it is a bit of a miss for the Kia brand on the whole. The car ticks a lot of the basic boxes you'd expect of a family SUV, but it just lacks the same refinement and polish that other cars in the Kia range have offered. The Sportage, the Sorento, the EV9 have all been Drive Car of the Year winners in recent times. This EV5 is just not quite up to that same standard. For a lot of buyers, it'll work, but yeah, there's definitely some room for improvement. All right, now we're in the Zeekr 7X, and this is a car we've been waiting a while to drive on a public road, and I've got to say, it definitely does not disappoint. This one here is obviously the top spec performance model, so dual motor and all-wheel drive, and you get the most power in this car out of the bunch, 475 kilowatts. That's on par with a V8 BMW M5 from a generation ago, for example. That means it has serious grunt, 0 to 100 in 3.8 seconds. This is a properly quick car in a straight line. And unlike a lot of Chinese cars, it actually has the handling talent to back up that grunt. The steering is really nicely weighted, not too light, not too heavy. You can choose between various modes through the screen here. Common theme with this car. But generally, yeah, well weighted, quite direct and quite easy to get along with. The brake pedal is also quite nice. Not too grabby, but also not too soft and unresponsive, which is also quite good there. Got a choice of 2 regenerative braking modes through the screen, but the car also has a full 1-pedal mode that will bring it to a full stop if you lift off the accelerator pedal for long enough. It is quite slow in bringing the car to a standstill. This car is the only one here on air suspension, and it actually rides really well over bumps, probably the most supple ride of the three. There is still a bit of a taut edge at times to the way it rides. It's not super floppy or really floaty like that Kia can be, but also it's not quite as taut and sporty as that Tesla, for example. Soaks up bumps really nicely, sort of glides over imperfections in the road. The big wheels can occasionally crash into potholes and things like that, and really sharp bumps, but for the most part, this is the best riding car here of the three. It's also impressive on a country road as well. Very stable, very secure. The air suspension soaks up bumps really nicely, and it's just a really good car to drive in that environment. Not an out-and-out sports car. It's not a Model Y performance competitor, even though it is called performance, but it does do a pretty good job, and it does everything you want an electric SUV that's this fast to do on the road. You've got plenty of customizability in terms of how you want the car to drive through this screen here. We've left the suspension in comfort most of the time and found that's a pretty good balance for both city driving as well as country. But you've got choice of your air suspension height, for example, your steering, your regen braking, your acceleration, and all that kind of stuff. Visibility is also quite good in this car. You do feel like you have the longest bonnet in front of me here, but vision is pretty good otherwise out of all sides. The rear view mirror is, or rather the rear view out of the mirror is on the smaller side, but again, the Tesla is in the same boat with that as well. And I do like the side mirrors as well there. It's pretty quiet at a cruise, not too much road noise, not too much wind noise as well. It's quite refined in that sense too. In terms of your safety aids, these are between the Tesla and the Kia in terms of features as well as calibration. You may have heard a beep before from the driver monitoring system. That does get on your nerves a little bit, but not too much, and I haven't found it myself really turning it off on this test. Lane keep assist is not too annoying. Same goes for all the speed assistance system as well there. And overall, they are pretty well calibrated. And yet, this Zeekr X is a really impressive package on the whole. Rides well, nice to drive, plenty of power, quite refined, and it really feels like you're getting your money's worth. You're sort of close to 80 grand's worth by the time you add on-road costs and whatnot. And yeah, a really impressive package and Zeekr's best work to date.
Conclusion time, and I reckon let's start with this Kia EV5 because in isolation it's not a bad car in a lot of respects. I like a lot of the party tricks on the inside, but in this company it just feels a bit underbaked and outgunned, doesn't it?
Yeah, to drive it's sort of okay. It's not exceptional like the other two here we have. The range is pretty modest. The charging performance in terms of fast charging isn't fantastic. And some things like the interior, that front bench looks great, but isn't so great to use. And it's just not in the same league as far as performance, features, space, or just general refinement goes.
Tesla Model Y, this is the car that needs no introduction, and still this car really delivers in so many ways, doesn't it?
That's right, fantastic performance, sporty but still quite a livable ride, great handling, super practical inside, loads of space, great technology. It's all really well laid out, and as far as screen heavy cars go, this is the benchmark, or at least has been the benchmark up until now. But in what may be a bit of a surprise verdict, at least in the forms we have here, this Zeekr X is our winner today. It's a really impressive car from what is still a very new brand.
That's right. It's no small feat to take on the Tesla and knock it over, but there are a few things for me that really stand out about this Zeekr. Number one, ride quality. It does have a really nice supple ride to it. That second row is really impressively spacious, and just the amount of gizmos that you get for your money in this car, along with great performance and just a feeling of really good quality throughout the car, means that this is the pick out of these three.
But where some other cars in this segment have fallen down, a BYD C-Line 7 on the road in our last comparison test, an MG IM6 by just having too much to do and too much to interact with, this is a really well-rounded vehicle, and it really takes the Tesla on at its own game and wins. But what do you think? Did we get this right? Should we do this again with the rear-wheel drive versions of these cars? Because there still might be a little bit more to play for there. Let us know in the comments down below.
And if you are hungry for more electric car content, especially on the Tesla Model Y, check out this big comparison here, because it's a huge one with lots of information that I'm sure you'll enjoy.